It must suck to be Boots right now. I mean, just think about the fact that it wasn't very long ago when this man was highly praised. Everybody was talking about him. We saw him out there smoking guys like Sergey Lipinets, Thomas Delorme, Roy Manvilla, Avanesian. Like, we were talking about him fighting Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford had just went out there and absolutely obliterated Errol Spence. I mean, a legendary performance that Crawford went out there and put on, and we were talking about Boots fighting him. I mean, that's the biggest stage you could imagine, right? It doesn't get any bigger than that. Crawford talks about moving up to 154. Boots starts talking about chasing him. We're talking about this man in the most glowing and highly respected terms. But think about where we're at today. Where we're at today, we got people bad-mouthing this guy. I mean, don't get me wrong. We always had people talking about his defensive flaws, and we were talking about the defensive flaws a little bit more so after that rematch. They had knocked a little bit of the shine off on everything that we were talking about Boots, and afterwards Crawford had went out on social media, and basically he was at that point dismissing the fight and saying that Boots needed to focus more on his division and bettering himself as a fighter, working on all the little nuances and the ins and outs. I get all that. Makes perfect sense. But then all of a sudden we hear about this fight between him and Vergil Ortiz, where there's things going on in the background, there's talks going on, and then all of a sudden, like nowhere, it just seems to fall through. And the first thing that we heard that it was weight issues. And there were some people that were pretty upset about that. There were people bad-mouthing Boots already. And they were saying this man was not negotiating in good faith. Everybody knows that Vergil Ortiz can't make 147 pounds. He was hospitalized last year when he tried to make 147. He moved up to 154. Anybody who's serious about fighting Vergil Ortiz needs to be talking about fighting at 154. Otherwise, they're just out there perpetrating a fraud, probably using his name to gain some publicity, not negotiating in good faith. So that was the first thing that we heard. And then just to rub salt in the wound, make matters a little bit worse, Boots comes out and makes a statement. And I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the man comes out and says, I had nothing to do with anything. I didn't know that these negotiations were taking place. If you don't hear it from me, it's not the truth. And that was just, I don't know, man, that was kind of crazy because immediately afterwards, you had Vergil Ortiz's manager coming out and saying, this is completely false. There were people like your father and the promoter and other people who were saying this legit. For Boots to come out and make a statement like that, think about this for 1 second. There's only two things that this possibly says. Number one, he's telling the truth and he's not in control of his career. He's telling the truth because he doesn't know any of these things that are happening and all these people who are out there trying to negotiate and make deals and everything on his behalf. And they're like completely managing his career and everything without him. He's not in control of his career. That would be one of the conclusions. That's not a good thing. The second possible conclusion would be that he was completely aware of everything that was going on and there were people negotiating on his behalf and all of that and everything was on the up and up. But as soon as it fell through, he wanted to try and save face in the public. So he came out and he made a statement and saying that he didn't have anything to do with it, lying about it not being true. If that's the case, that's a horrible thing. So either way, he comes out and makes this statement, and it makes him look horrible. And ever since then, man, you got people just beating him up in the media, saying all kinds of unkind things about him, saying they'll never negotiate with him again, saying a fight between him and Vergil Ortiz is never going to be in the possibility of happening again. You got people trying to talk to Turki Al-Sheikh saying, don't put him on any more cards. Think about that. Think about from where he was when he was talking about fighting guys like Terence Crawford, who we put up on Mount Olympus. Now all of a sudden we got Vergil Ortiz, who's scheduled to fight on this February 22nd card over in Riyadh. So things are looking good for him. And here's Boots, odd man out, sitting at home, nothing to do, no fight scheduled. And people in the boxing landscape, fighters, promoters, managers, whoever the case may be, not a lot of people have a lot of good things to say at this point. So you had him in a situation where everybody was praising him, but fighters didn't want to step in with him because it was high risk, low reward. Then all of a sudden he starts talking about chasing guys and people are thinking about what can happen there. And now all of a sudden, just a short while later, this is a guy who we're talking about his defensive flaws, saying he may have been a little bit overrated, saying he may have gotten exposed a little bit. And now there's people who are just hammering him for the business practices. Oh, horrible, dude. Horrible situation to be in. You know, and part of me feels like it was his fault, the way that he mishandled things. Another part of it is just getting caught up at a funny time with the people that were really making that welterweight division having moved up, and you were kind of there without any big namers, and you kind of wanted to chase the kings of the old guard, but didn't want to stick around here. And now things, oh man, what a bad spot to be in. And all he is, at the end of the day, when you think about it, all he is an incredibly talented fighter who wants to get in the ring and fight the best people out there. That's really, at the end of the day, all Boots is. Man, what a tough spot to be in. Look, I feel for the guy. I've said before my opinion on this matter, and it hasn't changed at this point. Unless he can't make weight, unless he has trouble making 147 pounds, I say you stick at 147 pounds. Stick your flag in the ground. Make that your division. Old school, the way Marvin Hagler did it at 160. Like, that's the way to do it, because 147 is always going to have people coming through there. It's just this perfect blend of this size and strength, so it captivates the public's attention. There's people always going to be moving through the division, people who start at the division and then go ahead and move up and do great things. 147 is one of those divisions, man. I would not advise Boots to chase anybody. You put yourself in a position where in the future people will chase you. You build up your star, you build up your credibility, and at 147, you just continue to smoke everybody out there and perfect your craft. You stick your flag in the ground, you do it that way, you don't get caught up and dragged into a lot of these situations. And you may feel like, oh, I could have potentially got the Terence Crawford fight. You're never going to get it anyways. Oh, I could have potentially got this fight. You're never going to get it anyways. I'm telling you, if it was up to me, and it's not like this guy's listening to me, but I'm looking at all these things that are happening. I'm thinking, you should be listening to me. You should be calling me up for advice, because clearly I could give advice that would put him in a better position than the one that he finds himself in today. Right? That's all I'm saying. Don't claim to know anything by any stretch of the imagination. But when I think about the correct way to manage a fighter's career, the way that you want to kind of engineer and make things happen, you couldn't have done worse than where we find Boots today. Just my take on it. Incredibly talented fighter sitting on the sidelines with people talking bad about him and no fight schedule. That's the last thing in the world anybody wants. From the fans all the way up to the fighter himself. He wants to be fighting. Fans want to see him fight. He wants to earn. Really, truly, promoters want to see talented guys get out there, because that's who they earn the most money off of. Wow, this thing just seemed to crumble out of nowhere. So let me know what you guys think. How did you interpret this whole situation? Who you have to blame for this one? Is there any blame at all, or is it just kind of the way the cookie crumbled? Let me know what you guys think.